I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad!
How's it going, killers and survivors alike? I'm Grog, also known as the Orc Under Bridges. Today I want to discuss the latest patch notes and if they're really as bad as some players are saying they are, with many of the Pain, Res, Overbrine, Andes, and Dead Hard users going hard in the paint to prophesize the end of Dead by Daylight as we know it, which sounds a little familiar and in my opinion is a massive over-exaggeration. The recent patch came with a slew of new changes to the game in the hopes of breaking the current meta for both killers and survivors. Some of the best perks on both sides getting hit pretty hard with nerfs, along with medkits having a slight rework in terms of time to heal. Even the charges and add-ons on medkits themselves got a slight rework. So since we've already mentioned it, I'm going to start with the medkit changes, as that's one of the biggest changes that people have a problem with currently. And I can see why many survivor mains are upset by these changes because of just how hard behavior hit the current medkit system. Personally, while I like the changes to medkit, heal speeds, and self-heal speeds, I think they should be adjusted, as I think they may have gone a bit too overboard with this. The new time to heal other survivors, otherwise known as altruistic healing, is now up to 24 seconds, and this is the base speed without a medkit or any other add-ons or perks. So far, it sounds kind of tame. It doesn't really sound like much of a time increase. This is until you take into account killer intervention, like he just happens to stumble upon you while healing, or he finds you, or maybe they're using Nurse's Calling. The more egregious side is the increase to heal speeds that killers can inflict on survivors through perks like Sloppy Butcher, and these times can get really crazy. Of course, right now, there's a lot of salt because of these changes, and a lot of people on both sides of the coin either try really hard to justify the ridiculous heal speeds from killer perks to survivors running things to make the worst possible scenario for themselves, even going so far as to run things like self-care and acting like that is the healing speed you will see 100% of the time. In my opinion, it's very disingenuous, as I think self-care most definitely should have the longest heal speed option. Remember, you're healing yourself at absolutely no cost to you besides your time. The idea should be, should I take my chances to find a friend to heal me, or should I self-care and possibly save myself the time? Because if you choose to get healed by a teammate, you have to go and find one, which isn't always the easiest thing to do, as these maps are quite large. The solution I think behavior should take is to adjust the biggest killer perks that will slow down healing, perks like Sloppy Butcher or even Pentimento, while keeping the overall nerfs to medkits, their charges, and their add-ons. Some of the heal speeds it can get to are egregious like I said, but there's no reason to throw out the entire medkit nerfs, especially since self-healing is already a massive issue with how quick it is, many survivors being able to quickly heal themselves in the middle of a chase. All that being said, it's not like survivors are left without options to combat these changes. Even if the PTB goes to live servers unchanged, we have the perk Autodidact, being able to massively cut down the time it takes on altruistic healing. This perk can even combat the worst anti-heal builds killers can come up with. With all 5 stacks of Autodidact, you can instantly get half progress from only one skill check. Even getting charges for Autodidact took little to no time at all to accumulate, even when used in actual game scenarios. That's not even counting survivor perks like reactive healing, We're Gonna Make It, or even inner healing, nor does it take into consideration how enticing iridescent syringes are going to become after these changes, as that will allow you to heal yourself as well as doing something else. Really, it's not going to be the end of the world like some people are trying to push. And one more note on the healing changes is that it seems to affect the healing and recovering speeds on dying survivors. In my opinion, this has to be an unintentional change because I don't think this is mentioned in the patch notes, and it's really ridiculous how slow the recover and healing speeds are on dying slugged survivors. Onto the perk changes, they are some of the changes made in patch 6.7.0 that I was most excited to see. The perks nerfed were some of the most oppressive and powerful to go up against and completely changed the flow of the trials if they were used. On the killer side, we have Overcharged nerf, now having less of a penalty for survivors. It's not the best nerf, it's mostly just a numbers change. Some say they would have preferred a rework entirely, and I can agree with that. At least it still tones down a very oppressive perk, especially for new players, as veteran survivors will mostly hit the overcharged skill check. The next killer perk that was nerfed was Colubrine. And I'm a little so-so on this nerf. It's really strong in its current state, and definitely needed something done to it, but this seems a little much, as seeing it will now only buy the killers 3.75 seconds, and this is after the gen has regressed for 1 minute. With this nerf, I think that Call of Brine really doesn't warrant much of a perk slot anymore, with how little time it buys, and I think that this just outright killed the perk entirely, which for some may be good, depending on who you ask. Finally, we have Pain Resonance, which was nerfed to work with a token system of some kind. Killers will still need to hook survivors on scourge hooks, but now only 1 pain res will proc per survivor on the first hook. So far, I think this is a decent change, but some will tell you that this perk is dead now, much like Call of Brine. For survivors, the 2 perks that got hit were Dead Hard and Circle of Healing, both receiving pretty substantial nerfs that will bring them more in line with other perks in their categories, Dead Hard being more in line with exhaustion perks, and Circle of Healing being more in line with other boons. Now survivors will have to safely unhook another survivor in order for Dead Hard to become usable. You will then be able to use the perk as it is currently, and it will deactivate upon successful use of the perk. Survivors will then need to safely unhook another survivor if they want to reuse the perk. Personally, this was a change that I was really excited for, as I was really confused as to why Behavior gave us a perk that had absolutely no downside to using it. If a survivor successfully used Dead Hard, they would extend the chase. If they didn't, they would go down, like they would have otherwise. So there really is no downside besides exhaustion, but that only limits you using another exhaustion perk on top of Dead Hard. That was mostly my biggest issue with Dead Hard, was that it felt like you got a free hit, you essentially had to do nothing to earn it. Unlike perks like Metal of Man, which require you to take protection hits before you yourself gain an extra hit. Circle of Healing's nerf was one that I didn't see coming, but it was also a welcome change, as this perk has been the boon to end all boons since it came out. It became the Big Mama, the Michaela Reed special. Now no longer allowing a self-heal at all, the boon will now increase healing speeds by 50%. I like these changes, as Circle of Healing has overshadowed other boons in the game for a long time, being one of the top picked boons, while other boons like Shadow Step or Dark Theory barely get used at all. Something else I was sort of excited to see was the range of killer changes coming with the PTB as well, except for one, but we'll get to that. We'll start with the good ones. Some of the biggest and best killer changes came with the flashlight interactions getting removed entirely. So now Spirit, Wraith, and Nurse all have their light burn interactions removed completely. This is especially good for Wraith, who arguably saw the most benefit from this feature, as Wraith burns are incredibly common while you almost never see a flashlight burn on a Spirit or Nurse. Nurse only being able to be flashlight burned during her power, and Spirit during her husk. There were also a ton of great add-on buffs for killers like Oni, Pig, and the Nightmare. And lastly, one of the biggest changes I think that will make survivors even more happy is that the Lament configuration will now teleport if the Cenobite stands on it for 5 seconds. This keeps the Cenobite from holding the box hostage and just keeping survivors in an infinite loop of chain hooks. Now it's time for the bad changes to killers. The Hillbilly received nerfs to his engravings that bring the chainsaw sprint speed way down to plus 10% and plus 15% for death gravings and doom engravings. While on paper this change doesn't seem like it will have much of an effect at all, but many Billy mains are giving feedback that it's definitely a noticeable change and makes an already weak and nerfed killer even worse. Personally, I'm not the biggest Billy main. I rarely ever choose to play him, so I can't really speak too much on how this will affect him as a killer. However, the Twitch streamer Rapid main is a big Billy main, so if you want more insight on this change, I'd suggest you head over to his video, which will be put up right now. I wanted to end this video on a positive note, so let's talk about some of the changes coming to the game that are only a benefit, whether it be to players with conditions that limit their ability to play the game, or a change that players have been wanting for years. That being a visual terror radius for the hearing impaired, or if you have some loud ass friends that never shut the hell up. You know who I'm talking about, you're watching this video. The worst thing that could possibly come from this change are survivors blasting music and using the visual terror radius. Overall, a welcome change, especially to those who are hearing impaired and don't want to miss out on this amazing game. The second new addition is the automatic blood web completion. Currently in the PTB, if you have a character past Prestige 1, you will be able to auto-buy and complete the blood web to quickly level up that character. It's another welcome change that only benefits the player base and will help a ton of people level up their character's Prestige 100. The only downside to this is that you can only start using the automatic blood web feature after you reach Prestige 1 on Survivor. That's about it for the changes that I wanted to mention in this video. I know this recent patch has really stirred up some players, especially on Twitter, where toxicity breeds like a bunch of cockroaches. But all in all, these changes aren't "this game is going to die" level missteps like some are trying to convince you. These changes aren't set in stone yet, and Behavior is specifically looking for player feedback by putting these changes into the PTB. Remember to be nice and courteous to people online, because currently the community is just filled with toxic and entitled behavior that ultimately isn't going to help anyone, and only makes you as a person look worse. Thanks so much for listening to me ramble on about the current PTB, and I hope my thoughts gave some players more insight to the changes, because some of these changes I believe did need to happen for the benefit and longevity of Dead by Daylight. As I'm recording this, they actually released a player satisfaction survey, which asks for input about things other than the PTB, and some of the prompts and questions make me excited for what Behavior has planned for the future. Thanks again for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe too. I'll be making more Dead by Daylight content in the future. Thanks for watching. I'm out. Peace.